First of all, I want to give a shout out to the GMs and the wives, the godly men and the warm, inviting, feminine, empathetic women out there. Now, in today's video, and for those that are just joining, my name is Thaddeus, and this is the Regal Change YouTube channel. For those that are just joining, we go through an array of different topics on this channel, and all of them are more tailored toward spirituality and a holistic understanding of life. And so in today's video, I want to talk about how lonely men can either make or break their lives and society as a whole in their world. So what exactly is the difference between being alone and being lonely? Because there's a lot of people that can see others out in the community, right? And it's like, oh, that guy kind of looks alone or lonely or whatever, and maybe he's just enjoying his time alone, right? So what exactly is the difference? Being alone is you can still have an abundance mindset being alone. Being lonely is you operate in a scarcity mindset. Now, to give you guys an example, about the time of COVID, right when COVID hit, I was working at a company, and at the time we had lost like 30% of our clientele within like a month because, well, with COVID, our clients weren't making as much money, so they had to decrease the amount of money that they were paying for their own company, and that made our company suffer. So we had to take a pay cut, all of us on our team at this digital marketing company that I was working at. And everybody, like, again, we'd lost like 30% of our clientele. So at the time, my boss had a specific kind of mentality. And this is when I realized that he was operating from a scarcity mentality. He told me, because the new clients that we were taking at the time, I was just like, look, why are we dealing with these people? They're disrespecting our boundaries. They're not communicating well. And some of them haven't even paid yet. So, like, why are we taking on these clients? Like, why are we dealing with these people? And basically the answer that I got from my boss at the time was, well, we don't have anybody else. And immediately in my mind, I was like, holy shit, that's a scarcity mentality. And when I get my own business, I'm not going to have that kind of mentality. And so I was just thinking about that, and I was like, wow, that's bizarre. Like, I understand, but at the same time, I could see where he was coming from, because not only did he have his table to put food on, he had everybody else's table on the team that he was responsible as a leader to put food on the table. So he was doing what he thought was right. But I was just like, we've already taken a pay cut and these people aren't even paying anyway. So, like, we're wasting our time. Like, we're wasting our time with these people. And so it was at that point when I began to realize how challenging it can really be for a leader to operate, especially when you're actually operating from a lonely standpoint. So there's another few different kinds of things that I want to touch on with this topic. And for example, how to know if you're projecting or not, because what exactly is the main difference between the lonely man and I mean, this really goes for men and women, but specifically because I'm making a video about how men can either make or break society, because men are, when they are prone to anger, usually there's physical violence that occurs. Whereas with women, their form of aggression is through reputation destruction. So men and women operate differently when it comes to anger and violence, their form of violence, let's say. So lonely men tend to have this scarcity mentality, and they also tend to have a tendency to project. Well, how do you know if you're projecting? It's when you get excessively angry or defensive about something someone says or does, or you are trying to hide from whatever the truth is. So this is going to be something that you can think about if you are a man out there that has a scarcity mentality. Well, how do you grow into the abundance mentality? Well, you really have to rewrite your algorithmic structures within your subconscious mind. And so you have to it's almost like a pathological switch that you have to make. Like you have to pathologically have this kind of inner self-confidence enough to the point to where you can actually make the switch, and then you can actually have genuine self-confidence. Now, pathologically speaking, of course, if you have a pathology, it's not going to be a very healthy mindset. But if you're already in the scarcity mentality, well, then I would urge you to have a pathological self-confidence. And what that looks like is telling yourself stuff even when you don't believe it. And that's going to, like, why would you do that? Like, why would I recommend that? Well, it's because let's say you're not really that confident and you keep telling yourself, well, I'm not confident. I'm kind of depressed. I have anxiety. I'm anxious. Well, we live in a time where women are over 25% of women, maybe even more than that, but the last time I checked, it was over 25% of women over the age of 18 in the US are on antidepressants of some kind. Men are committing suicide 3 times more than women globally. Okay. What exactly is this saying? It's that women are more survivalist and men can be more of a fatalist when it comes to certain kinds of how they deal with negative emotions. So learning how to properly address negative emotions and accepting them without being an enemy to them is going to be the first step to overcome this kind of scarcity mentality. Okay. So when you are operating in a scarcity mentality and you're telling yourself these things like, oh, I'm not confident, I'm not the man, I'm not competent, I'm not a leader, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not blah, 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 blah. What you're doing is you're telling your subconscious mind and you're confirming it that you actually are not those things. So when I say have pathological self-confidence, what I'm saying is when you hear those internal thoughts of like, oh, I'm not confident or I'm not this, you have to completely consciously switch that around and say, no, I'm the most confident man on the planet. And that sounds kind of weird, right? But you have to, like, you'll start to rethink how you think about yourself, and you'll start to act in a more proper way, in a proper manner, in which you'll actually start to believe that, like, okay, I'm going to make myself the most confident man on the planet. And you just have to believe it. Like, you may not think that it's true, but you tell yourself this enough times, it's going to be exactly like the other kind of mentality where, oh, I'm not confident, I'm not this, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. No, I'm a lucky son of a gun. I'm really lucky, actually. I am strategically building my life, and I trust that God is going to bless me with abundance. And if you have this mentality and you continue to tell yourself this enough times, well, then you're going to get to a place where you can be alone, but still have that abundance mentality. And so maybe you're working on yourself to become more abundant in your mindset. And this is another thing that I see with lonely men in our society is they get so hung up about women sometimes. And look, I understand it. I get it. But at the same time, when I began to realize that there was more to life than women, like truly and genuinely, that's when all the women started to come my way. That's when all the women started to want me, was when I started to just let go of even the thought of having a woman or having a girlfriend or whatever. When I completely let that go, well, now all of a sudden the women are approaching me. Now all of a sudden the women are qualifying to me, and they're not like now they're simping for me. And guess what? When a woman is simping for you, that's when she's at her most happiest. A lot of women will not admit this, but it's very true. It's very, very true. And no man is going to be upset with a wife, let's say, a warm, inviting, feminine, empathetic woman that is submissive to him and respects him. Like, there's no man that's going to be upset about a woman like that, like a beautiful woman, a beautiful wife, right? There's no man that's going to be upset about that kind of a thing. But first, you have to become that kind of man that she can respect. And that starts with learning how to respect yourself and giving yourself self-compassion. If you don't give yourself self-compassion, how are you going to give anybody else compassion? How are you going to be able to demonstrate compassion and lead by example? If you're going to be a leader, you've got to be able to lead by example. And so learn how and when and why you're projecting, if you are projecting, and learn how to address your emotions, the negative ones specifically, in a way that makes you not an enemy to those negative emotions. Because that's what a lot of people have. I call it like toxic positivity. A lot of people are toxically positive too. It's like, what are you about? Like, what are you really about? Because you seem like way too happy. Like you are trying too hard to be happy. And that in of itself can be toxic because you're not actually accepting your feelings and what your feelings are actually going on. You may be feeling guilt or shame in your stomach. You might be feeling stress in your neck or your throat or your head, but you don't want to admit that, so it makes things worse altogether. And that's not something you want to have happen. So with that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful, and peace be with you. Till next time.